Okay, hi Gabriella. We are back again, and this time we're exploring, well, really kind of like the neurodiversity, but outside of the workplace. So we're looking at within the community, and specifically, you want to talk about faith groups today.
Yeah, we decided to go for that topic because things that happen in the workplace also happen outside of the workplace. People don't become neurodivergent as they walk through the work, like the office doors.
Okay,
It's in everyday life.
so I guess from a starting point, paint us a picture. What is it that we need to be looking at specifically today to help us understand where you're coming from?
So I think, along with all of the other things we said before, knowledge, recognition, understanding is growing. But like I've said before, where we've worked with children looking at special educational needs, and if you're looking at safeguarding, there's extra understanding around the neurodiversity piece or special educational needs. And then as someone becomes an adult, it's almost like that's not a thing anymore. I think it can be easy for faith communities, and my experience is largely in church, though I work with other faiths as well. That's become very kind of well recognised within the kids ministry, within the children's work, within the Sunday school, or whatever it is, in other faiths. But it hasn't translated across to the adult gatherings, congregations. And actually, in exactly the same way as we've talked about in business, in life, you've got adults coming to worship meetings, faith meetings, gatherings who are also experiencing difficulties. And it's something that faith communities need to become more aware of. They need to understand, recognise, and maybe make some adjustments or have some better understanding, if nothing else. But actually, it's as important as in other spheres of life.
So we're talking about kind of creating space for people to basically participate, right, in a full way that is relevant to those individuals. So this is no different to work. This is no different to any other aspect or area of life. It's how do we enable people to participate fully in their neurodiversity?
Absolutely. I mean, faith communities are set up as we want people to belong here. We want people to feel welcome. We want people to be authentic, but that's often incredibly difficult if you have a neurodivergent condition of any sort. And so, in order for that full welcome, that inclusivity, that understanding, that space to genuinely be yourself, in order for all of that to be possible, there needs to be some understanding, some recognition, and some adjustments made so that somebody who's neurodivergent can fully participate where they might normally struggle.
Now, talk to me about numbers here. So, quite often it's like, but is this a big proportion? Not that we should be kind of like only kind of clicking in help when we reach a certain number, right? We're not advocating for that at all.
Sure.
But what kind of numbers are we talking about that we know about neurodiversity within the community? I mean, we've spoken about the workplace, but maybe not in terms of the numbers, but talk to me about percentages. Talk to me about the numbers of neurodiverse people that we're aware of that exist within a community.
So the numbers are quite difficult. I don't have stats specifically for faith groups because maybe there is something out there. Maybe I need to do some more research on exact numbers. But generally speaking, it is recognised that around 1 in 5 people are diagnosed with a neurodivergent condition. There are tons and tons of people who remain undiagnosed or have self-diagnosed or are on the process along the journey of diagnosis. So if you're talking 1 in 5, so around the 20% mark, faith communities in general reflect the community that they're in. They reflect the environment that they're in some way. So you're going to have the same sort of numbers with any faith community. And so
Right.
therefore it is significant.
And the those who are undiagnosed, I know in my work, I've encountered many people who kind of get into their 40s, into their 50s. They maybe are noticing needs in their own children. And in looking at the needs of their own children, they start looking inwards at themselves and see maybe some of their own way that they interact with the world being kind of mirrored in their children's behaviors and start looking at their own neurodiversity as well. And so we're talking adults who are in their 40s and 50s. We're not talking kind of like 20, 30-year olds, although they will exist, but we are talking parents, possibly even grandparents, who have learned considerable ways how to manage their way through the world. And yet there is a neurodiversity, there's an experience for them that may be engaging within a wider group difficult.
Absolutely. And like I say, that is reflective within faith community or outside. But we are seeing a massive proportion of people, particularly in their 40s, recognizing, as you said, their neurodiversity because they're looking at their children and then kind of going, well, either when things are pointed out, are kind of going, no, that's just totally normal because that's how our family is,
Yeah.
which is a flag in and of itself, right? I'm not saying it's a red flag because there's nothing bad about it, but what I'm saying is it's an indicator in and of itself that a family is neurodivergent, but or they're looking at it and going, oh my gosh, that explains things for me now. The
And I've
process of my child or grandchild going through that is explained, and that's my story. So my godchild is autistic, and I started to go to a support group to learn more about them so I could be a better godmother and understand them more. And in going to that, I was like, well, hang on a pretty little minute. This is resonating rather a lot to the point of recognizing my autism and then later my ADHD. So I've gone through a similar experience in actual fact. And what I've found really interesting as well is that as I've stepped into that and unpicked it and learned more about it, I've discovered more and more people within the faith communities that I'm in. So within the autism support community, I ended up kind of being known as the ASC whisperer because I would turn up with another family from my church and go, I found another lot that needs support because I was just bringing more and more people in. And it became very, very clear there's like this subset within the church the church I'm at, of people who were all walking around with this, that was just the autism piece. That wasn't all of the other things. And I found myself, with some of the young adults, the people in their 20s and stuff who I've chatted to, maybe sort of support them a little bit when they've gone through difficulties at college or work, or, you're within that community. And actually, that's been a big slice of the issue or difficulty for them is their neurodiversity.
Yeah.
So actually, it's really going on in there. You've got creatives and people who are living in different ways.
Yeah.
So there could be higher proportions in some directions as well. But it's all going on. It's all going on in the faith communities as well.
And as much as we've had this conversation about or for and on behalf of employers to kind of understand this yet again is an opportunity to kind of like look at the intersection between safeguarding and neurodiversity and how we hold those two things at the same time. And quite often, and I've been to training where a lot of the safeguarding and where there have been faith groups there, a lot of the focus of safeguarding is on children. And as much as you have said, a lot of the focus on neurodiversity is on children. And that's brilliant. And that's really, really important. But there is a need to, whilst holding a neurodiverse space within a faith community, to be also holding that alongside the safeguarding issue as well, that they are connected, or at least I'm wondering if they are connected in that way within those kind of communities.
I think, and we've talked about it not just being safeguarding in neurodiversity, but also mental health.
Yes.
And so one of the things is with faith communities, a lot of the time, well, majority of the time, you're actually openly talking about or being taught about or learning about deeper life issues, right? So who am I? Where is my place in this world?
Just the small
How
questions.
do I just the really, really miniature, irrelevant, not at all mind-boggling questions that you can just answer over a cup of tea, right? So
but
what I'm saying is you're
ask
dealing with
those
those
questions,
things, okay?
and you ask those questions, and that opens up all sorts of stuff, right?
Whole sorts of stuff, because it's who am I? What's my place in this world? How can I live in what's considered the most faithful way to recognize my faith journey within this, whichever faith community I'm in? Am I being disobedient to the God that I follow because I have these issues? Is it showing a lack of faith that I can't cope with X, Y, Z? Which ties into mental health and all those different things. And again, mental health in faith communities, and again, I come from more of a church background, but I've worked with other faith communities as well, a lot, in a lot of different areas of work. But there is that thing where mental health is being more understood now. So depression isn't a matter of sin, it's a matter of an illness. Those kinds of things. But actually, the neurodiversity piece needs to come in there as well, because when you're questioning those things about you, it might be, I'm not applying myself to living God's way very well because I struggle with timekeeping and not being able to serve on a team because I find it overwhelming. So actually it can become another point of pressure if it's not understood.
Mm.
And that can affect mental health. It can also affect safeguarding, in terms of safeguarding a person if they're really struggling, and where does that piece come in? Where does someone perhaps need to be referred somewhere else because they're really struggling? And those three things, I will stand on the fact that those three things intertwine forever. Like,
Yeah.
that's a thing for me. So you can't have safeguarding without understanding mental health, without understanding neurodiversity, all of those things. And so in a faith community where those things are being opened up in terms of who am I, what does my life mean, you have to be aware of neurodiversity as much as you need to be aware of safeguarding or of mental health for adults as well as for children.
Yeah. Which I know before we even started recording this, we had a conversation about things that you felt that were like really helpful that any kind of community group could put in place, having, kind of like noise cancelling headphones and fidget toys, not just for children but for adults as well, and those things are really good. But what we're talking about here is real fundamental, how we create safe environments for people to ask deep questions, which these other things are really helpful. Quiet spaces, maybe, immediately I'm thinking a separate room away from a huge group of people where the noise is turned down. There's a speaker with whatever's being going on in the main room where you could have it, but it'd be quieter, right? Or, we could go on forever about things that would probably be helpful for different individuals.
And to be fair, a smaller church or synagogue or whatever might not have the capacity for separate rooms. Sure. But then perhaps one service that's a quieter service, or there's different ways. And I'll probably, I do top tips on neurodiversity. I might start putting some stuff out, top tips for faith communities. We can list all of those things. Absolutely. And those are fantastic because they start to make it accessible, but it goes much bigger than that.
It's that accessibility comes when people have a deeper understanding. Because what we don't want to do is, have a quick look on Pinterest, take the first top 10 things that Gabriella has shared on there, or Instagram or wherever, and just put those in place and think that what we're doing is creating a safe space for somebody who is struggling in that space. Actually, a deeper understanding that is more fundamental seems to be an important thing to be thinking about.
Oh yeah, 100%. One of my other really, really big things is any of this stuff cannot be tick box. You can't go, well, I've got a little box of sensory things that people can access now, so job done. That's almost an outward expression of we have a deeper understanding, or it should be. That shouldn't be the lead thing. That's coming out of we're learning, we're trying to understand, we want to be more inclusive.
Because it'll be in the way you have conversations, it'll be in the way that you communicate information. It will be, I know for a fact that I've been in workshops where people have had presentations up on screen with moving images and with words over the top. As a dyslexic, I find that really, really hard to follow. I think at one point people were talking about yellow writing on blue background, which is aesthetically really, really unpleasing, but actually really helpful if you're trying to read something as a dyslexic in a hurry, because, because people are changing slides really quickly. So all sorts of things is about a deeper understanding. And I guess that's the work that you're doing, right? Having conversations with organizations and businesses and community groups around how to have that deeper understanding.
Yeah, leading with those things or starting to implement some of those small changes is important, but that's not job done, essentially, is what I'm saying. Because it's much bigger than the right color writing on a
absolutely
thing. I think it's really important. It's interesting you say about conversations and things, because it's even if a faith community has an understanding, then offense won't be taken by certain things. So I was with a faith community on Sunday that's incredibly inclusive. And one of the people there, we were talking about some stuff to do with work, and they were like, oh, I really want to talk to you, about some work stuff. So I gave them my number and I said, listen, send me a text or a WhatsApp. I really don't deal with like out of the blue phone calls from somebody I don't know very well. Now, in some places, I'd be like, oh, wow, you're a bit, off. And they're like, yeah, cool. I'm exactly the same. And someone else in the room was like, I love it here because everyone can just be really quirky and weird and no one takes it the wrong way.
Yeah.
It didn't have to be a big explanation of because I'm neurodivergent and because I struggle a bit with not being able to see the person unless I know them really well. I didn't have to go into a whole thing. It was just like, make sure you message me first because I can't deal with phone calls, off the cuff from someone I don't know. And there was no big deal from anybody.
Yeah.
So if you've got communities that are a bit more understanding, those things can just happen. You can go, this is the bit that I find easier. And someone else goes, okay, cool. We'll try it that way. No big deal. Like, relationship isn't broken down. People don't think you're being rude.
Yeah.
Happy days.
So what's the one thing then that we would like a church or somebody from a faith group or a community group or something to go away with today from everything that we've said? What's a starting point for them?
I think the starting point is acknowledging that your community will reflect the numbers we've talked about. So accepting, believing, and recognizing that you have that community within your community of people who have a neurodivergent condition, are neurodivergent, be it where they've actually had a diagnosis, or they've self-diagnosed, or maybe they haven't even recognized it in themselves. And I would never say that means you go around going, oh, because you've reacted this way, you're probably like, no, going out there and trying to point people out. But like we've said loads of times, if you make somewhere inclusive in that way, even somebody who hasn't even recognized it themselves are going to find themselves having an easier time anyway.
Yeah.
So just recognizing that it is something you need to be aware of and probably have to start thinking about more deeply than just in the kids' work, which is fantastic, don't get me wrong. But your kids' pastors or your kids' workers have probably done a lot of the work, and actually considering that for the adults is really important.
Brilliant.
And I can help with that.
And that's what I was going to say. It's have a conversation with someone that knows.
Yeah.
So get in touch with you and just start that conversation and and that can lead to top-down conversations and training with everybody to have an understanding of how to make a welcoming and inclusive space.
Or a simple conversation to set someone on that road. Obviously, I would like people to take up my training, but I'm open to a conversation.
Sure. Great. Okay. Well, that's really good. Nice one. Thanks, Gabriella.
Thanks, Will.